speaker series. The Rainey Center for Free Enterprise is dedicated to understanding the role of free enterprise in our system and entrepreneurs within the system. And you see in today's topic, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship and the role that entrepreneurs play within the free enterprise system. I just want to say thank you to Buddy Rainey for sponsoring the Rainey Center for Free Enterprise with he and his wife with a very generous gift. And again, that is part of our the newest Center of Excellence in the Rinker College of Business. When you next week get to move into the Rinker College of Business, right there, the Rainey Center for Free Enterprise will have a physical space on the second floor. You come by at some point, check out the Free Enterprise Reading Room. The books aren't in yet, but we've got a pretty nice display of the best works within free enterprise history. Well, today we have the privilege of having David Hamilton Nichols join us. David, a man of many hats. He serves on the Rinker College of Business Advisory Board. That's where I got to know you probably better once you joined our board. But he's an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist. He is someone who's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the business world, where the businesses are going to be successful, how to see an early business and know if it's going to be successful or not. So he's got a lot of engagement in that entrepreneurial space. And what we're going to do is David and I are going to have a little chat, and you're going to be privileged to that chat. And then we're going to open it up to some Q&A, because it's particularly important to David that you, and particularly students, get to ask the questions that you want to ask relative to his vast knowledge that he has in this space. So without further ado, David, just give us a little brief bio, a little background. Who the heck are you, man?
I'm David Hamilton Nichols. I'm a fourth-generation Californian who has made the exodus to Florida. Or if you want to say it this way, I'm a refugee from the People's Republic of California in the free state of Florida. And loving it here. But I started in real estate. I was doing real estate for a lot of years before I got into investing in early stage companies. When friends of mine were starting companies, and it seemed like a good different risk-reward profile to add to the mix. And a little bit more about me and my eclectic and vast background that Dean Stroh alluded to. I'm an investor in early stage companies across multiple sectors. I've done everything from AI to blockchain, healthcare, fintech, climate, renewable energy, mostly US-based, although I have something active on most continents, so geographically diverse as well. I advise a venture capital fund. I've spoken everywhere from being a panelist at the Nobel Peace Center during Nobel Prize Week to events in Davos during World Economic Forum. And I've also spoken in India at the college and university level, a number of family office conferences, so quite a variety there. And I serve as an advisor to a number of companies, as well as some of those are in my portfolio, some of those aren't. So quite a diverse background, which we can go into later as people's questions may want to dictate.
So how did you end up choosing this career path? What brought you into the idea of venture capital? What interested you in this?
Well, I would say it was a combination of I knew people that were starting companies and the desire to diversify out of real estate. And I liked the different risk-reward profile. So that was a big factor. But if you want to go to another factor, I think there is an interesting thing about entrepreneurs that are starting companies. Usually they are solving major problems. Companies, well, obviously companies are out to make money, but they are not going to make money if they aren't solving a problem or meeting a need. Worst case scenario, maybe they're just entertaining, but even that's kind of a need of the human psyche and soul, because you are meeting what people want and need, and you are solving that problem. So I like solving problems, and I like fixing things, so I think that is something temperamentally that I found very interesting. And then you never have a dull moment because you have some of the most interesting conversations with some of the most interesting people on the planet.
that's not for nothing. I would say that's part of my role here. I get to have a conversation with you, one of the more interesting people that I've met. So thank you for being
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. So how do you spot a company that you say, wait a second, maybe I see a diamond in the rough here. Maybe there's something going on that other people don't see, and you, as you said, fill a need, serve a want. How do you know where that diamond is? What kind of level of assessment do you engage in?
Well, I would say there are some factors I look off straight out the gate. I would say there's 3 factors that are important. Is it solving a major problem? Is the business model sound? And are the founders skillful and able to execute? If you're not solving that problem, is there really a market for it? Now, yes, of course, you could be a little early. And if you're too early and there really isn't a market, that's a problem, but it's not usually the problem you're going to encounter. So is it solving a major problem? Number 2, is the business model sound? You could solve a problem, but if you don't have a business model, you're at best a charity. And God bless the charities and 501c3s out there, but they aren't businesses. And they often don't scale as well either. So you need a sound business model. And sometimes that business model can be unique. It doesn't necessarily have to be traditional. Sometimes the unique business models are the most interesting. But it does need to be sound. And then, of course, the third is, are the founders skillful and able to execute? Because at the end of the day, you're not just betting on the business, you're betting on the people running that business. It's like, are you going to pick the jockey or the horse? Not to say that investing is gambling, but everything has its risk. But somebody's got to be riding that horse and pointing that horse in the right direction, and that is the executive that is running that company. So those are some very important things. Beyond that, after that, you need to know, like, who is running it, what's their character, is the market there overall? What are the trends going on? Are there adverse geopolitical headwinds in the longer term for an industry? I would say there's a lot of other factors, but those 3 are some of the first ones I'm going to look at when I see something.
Okay. When you see a company or opportunity to invest in your experience, and let's say that something went sideways, is it typically in your experience of the things you mentioned, is it that it wasn't, as it turns out, a sound business plan, or is it more likely that the CEO went sideways? Like, in your experience, just from your side, not the global side, but just from your experience, if something's gone wrong, what usually goes squirrely?
Well, I would say, from my own experience and just as a general principle as well, people. Yeah. People can make or break a lot of things in life, whether we're talking business or anything societally. And you have people that can be, maybe they're not malicious, but they can't deliver. So you need to weed those out. If somebody, you need to make sure they are competent. And once in a while, maybe somebody gets through, especially if they're a first-time founder. This is the thing. A first-time founder does not have a track record. So if you're looking as an investor at a first-time founder, you have to be extra careful there because there isn't the track record. And sometimes somebody is going to maybe get through more likely in that scenario. But then there is also the other element. People sometimes are human and make some mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes are malicious. So there's 2 things where a company can go sideways because of the people, either skill and execution or malice. And I would say but again, I don't want to come out as too negative on people because people are also running these things. But you asked for the negative case. And I would say people have come up with genius ideas that are making the world a better place. People keep their word and do the right thing in running companies. So pick the right people.
So the flip side of that, would you also say then the things you've invested in that have been more successful than others, it was largely due to the people?
I would say it's a large factor. Obviously, you do need to have the business model, and you need to have be in a market that's there. And there's a lot of other factors, but people can very much be a make or break factor. And I think that will change some with AI, meaning you will need fewer people in leadership positions. Yes, you'll still have people running it, but you may see some key roles even replaced by AI than people running that. So you'll see fewer people on that team, possibly going forward.
Okay, all right. I do want to be respectful of your desire to hear from students. So you said, hey, I want to make sure I get...
I'm game to converse with you more, but again, my goal here is
He only likes me so much, and then he's like...
My goal is to help the students. I'm here, and have plenty of time here, but I want to make sure your needs are met.
Well, we can go back and forth a little bit, maybe. I want to let's break for some questions. Already, maybe something has sparked your interest. You've got a guy here, with his finger on the pulse, venture capital, spoken around the world, invested in multiple companies, has an eye for what's successful or not. You've already heard a little bit about what might be driving that success, and a lot of it is people. And you got a room full of people here who might have some inquisitive questions. So, someone want to start us off? Here we go.
So where do you see AI going now in terms of sectors like healthcare, longevity, fintech? Where do you see AI making the biggest impact?
I see AI, I think you named one right there that I actually just said at a conference at the World Trade Center in New York City just actually middle of March, I was there, and I actually said that, AI in healthcare. So thank you for, I didn't plant this guy. But yes, I think AI in healthcare is a big one, of course, and bringing that into diagnostics as well. In general, AI is transforming every sector, and I would say if you're running an AI company, find a problem that AI can solve in a sector, because it can transform a lot of different things. I don't think it's just limited to one sector, but one that I do see as prime is AI in healthcare. If you can break the bottleneck in some of the genetic testing by using AI, if you can use it for drug discovery, you can use it for enhancing diagnostics. I think that is a big one going forward that you just primed me for.
How can you integrate AI in people in business and still make a product or a company or an environment that's meaningful and impactful to the world?
Well, I would say people are the ones running that AI, at least currently. So you still need people, but some of the jobs are not going to be there. Some of them are going to be replaced by AI, and the people that are better in their field will be the ones using that AI. So hint, hint to every student here, if you're going to be in a field, check that field, how likely it is to be disrupted by AI, how fast, and become as good as you can in your field so you're the one using the AI rather than one that is replaced by AI. Now, as far as businesses go, right now, I mean, people still seem to want the human touch to some degree. So there's some, front-facing roles where people will be dealing in jobs in those new companies. Also, the people running that AI. Does this answer your question, or do you want to go a little different with that?
But also, with having too much AI, especially in customer service area, it could feel a little too dead, and there's no connection between the buyer and the seller. So how can we steer away from that while still using AI?
I would say customer service is, how is the service to begin with? I've seen customer service that AI actually would do better than the customer service. But if your customer service is stellar and there's a personal touch, I think you'll see some people that are wanting to have that interface with a human being. But I have seen enough customer service from some things that I will gladly take the machine over the human in some of those instances. Now, if somebody's doing a great job and it's personal, I'll still take that, but I think it's how is the service, and there is a lot of poor customer service. So stand out, the people you're hiring and using, maybe have them as a resort to solve the more, touchy cases. But it's going to have to be blended, partly because AI can do a lot of this with less expense and less cost.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. My name is Mary Trace. My question is, for young investors and people who are still trying to learn the market and see what's good to invest in versus not, what are your thoughts on relying on AI and asking AI what to invest in during times?
What I would say is you can use it for looking for market trends and looking and helping to get your data in a form that's going to be accessible for you. But I would say also use your head, because you're trying to learn to invest. You're young, you're a student. Don't depend on it too much at that stage in your life. Learn the critical thinking. Learn to analyze and use AI as an assistant and a tool rather than depending on that too much. And it depends on I don't know what you're trying to invest in. My guess is probably public markets, or are you looking at private markets? That's what I figured. Now, obviously, there's a lot of sources of data, and you can use AI to help you find data and put it in a form that you want to see it in, and you can use it for research. But again, I would encourage anyone, especially just starting out, to think through it themselves and go through the reasoning themselves so that there's the understanding there and that you can better then use that tool that is AI.
I've just got a question because I'm curious because you're meeting with entrepreneurs of all kinds all over the place. Are there any traits that you see or backgrounds? I mean, we've got students who want to learn and be entrepreneurs, and what advice do you have to give them in terms of what they could do to be prepared to be great entrepreneurs?
Get plenty of experience, all kinds of experience, because you will never regret having experience. Even if that experience at the moment seems like a very horrible experience, at a certain point, if you've learned from that, you'll find you are grateful for that. And learn everything you can, because entrepreneurs are seeing where there's a missing link, where something needs a need that needs to be solved. And the more different experiences you've had, the more knowledge you have, the more aha moments you're going to have where you can then come up with that idea. And then you can have that conversation better with a potential investor who may not speak the same language that you do around it. So having that depth and breadth of experience is helpful. And fail, be willing to fail. You are at the time in your life where you have the time to recover from failure. And not being afraid to fail. Obviously, don't do stupid stuff just to do stupid stuff and fail. But having the courage to just try things, and if you have to reinvent yourself, do that, because maybe you won't get it in the first or second iteration, but that what you've learned along that way is going to propel you further forward.
So you mentioned on a track record that it's difficult sometimes to invest in someone who doesn't have a track record that first time. How much of that track record, when you look at that track record and you see successes and you see failures, how do you view failures in someone's track record?
Well, if they do they know why they failed? Do they have they analyzed the failure and improved on that? What did they learn from it? I mean, obviously, if it's a string of nothing but failures, that's not going to be a very favorable resume. But if they have a few failures along the way that they learned from, and maybe some of those failures, some failures are more within our control than others. Obviously, if it was based on you as a founder made a decision, and that decision was a foolish decision that had bad impact, that's a different case than, say, you have a geopolitical event that destroys an entire market. So I think there are, and of course you can pivot in those things. Yes, you have a choice of how you handle those, and maybe you can solve that problem, because you are going to solve problems as an entrepreneur. Day in and day out, you may have to solve a new problem. So, but not every failure is for the same reason. So what are the reasons for that failure? And what was learned, and how was it handled? Those are also important factors.
We can double dip.
Where do you see the biggest gap in the market right now in terms of innovation? Like, where can entrepreneurs focus right now where there's an obvious gap in the market?
That's an interesting question, because there's I see so many things being worked on that I'm not. I would say, as I said earlier, diagnostics has not been has not seen as much progress as some of the others in the healthcare field. Because that's one that you mentioned earlier. If you can catch something earlier and detect it before it's really become a disease, the treatment options are, is provided there are treatment options, you are much better off, and it saves a lot of money for society. And I think we could see some things in that field that could be more addressed. I'm in a company that is working on some of that, but I think we could see more on that front.
I had a question on time. I'm fascinated with venture capital, so I apologize if I get asked too many questions myself. But on time frame, when you're seeing a brand new firm, they're not always profitable immediately. How much time does a firm usually take to become profitable? And how do you know when's the right time to invest in it then?
Well, I think it depends. If you're actually running a VC fund and have LPs, which I am not, you are going to have a certain time frame you are putting out to those LPs that this is where we're looking at returning the capital. And that raises interesting things in the entire industry, because then sometimes companies are pressed to deliver, or maybe they try to sell them off or push some things. But, that said, if you're coming in earlier, if you're first money in, you're looking at a longer horizon than if you're coming in a Series A, B, or C. So that's going to vary. And as an investor, I'm going to look at, okay, am I okay with not seeing a result from this for maybe 5 to 7 years, or sometimes even longer, depending on what it is. Now, and also the question I would say for any investor is, especially if you're dealing in something that is high risk, like early stage companies, know that there's a certain percentage of these, and often a very high percentage in the market, that is not going to make it to the finish line. Now, I have a very good track record, I only have had a few companies over the years that have ever failed. But again, that is not the norm. You look at, 90% of businesses fail. So try to do your best to pick ones that aren't going to fail, and know that even the ones that succeed, you are looking at a longer term than if you were in public markets. Public markets, you have liquidity, because you can just go to Charles Schwab, push a button, and you've sold your stock, and you have instant liquidity. Whereas if you are looking at venture capital and early stage companies and certain things, you have a time horizon where you don't have liquidity unless you sell it on the secondary market.
Thank you both very much. My name is Annabella. David, I'd like to know what kind of advice do you have for maybe a recent grad or someone that's about to graduate and they have that entrepreneurial spirit, but they still have to go to work, they have to enter the workforce because they have to provide for themselves. Would you suggest, like, if they have an idea and they want to start something, do they try to go into that sector, or is it like get any kind of job you can get, any kind of experience you can make some money while you're also building your business on the side? And how do you also like continue to keep the ball rolling, like keep up that energy, keep up that momentum, because becoming an entrepreneur is like, it can be exhausting and there's a lot of ups and downs. So I'm just curious what advice you'd have for a recent grad.
I would say that it would depend. Obviously, if you can find a job that is in a field you want to be in and that you eventually want to start a company in, that's phenomenal because you've had some experience then in that field when you go to start that company. Now, obviously, realistically, sometimes in the job market, you may not be able to find your ideal job. But if not, go then find what you can do, and in the meantime, learn even more about what you want to do, plan, and entrepreneurship is obviously not easy, to answer the second part of your question. And there are days where a lot of founders probably are thinking to themselves, why on earth did I get myself into this? So if you're going to run that company, you're committing to running that company for a lot of years. And this is something from the investor side, you can sometimes tell, is this person really in this to win this? Are they in it no matter what? I mean, I can give you an example of a company I'm an investor in that they actually even had some issues and there was some real conflict there. I was on a board. I even resigned from their board, due to some conflict and things going on. But I always said about them, they will never give up. I called the founders human cockroaches because they'll be running this company even after a nuclear war. And they know I call them that, and they're proud of that. So that is the attitude that as a founder that you're never going to give up no matter what. Now, of course, in that case, there were some things where I think they were stubborn, and I'd pointed out, like, look, what you're doing, A, B, and C, is going to lead to X, Y, and Z results, and you don't want X, Y, and Z. I don't think at the time they wanted to hear that, and eventually, they did implement a lot of it and kind of half begrudgingly admit it now, but that stubbornness can be, that's the flip side, that's the negative side of stubbornness. But you need to have a certain degree of stubbornness to carry on, to keep going, and to continue through. Now, having that stubbornness in the sense that you're not open to feedback or looking at things a different way, that's not the positive. But there is a positive side as well. So, again, I would say if you can get that job in a field that will help you for starting that company, all the better. But sometimes maybe you just need to get a job. And again, have the fortitude and the grit to carry through. And when you make that commitment, know that that is a long-term commitment, for better or for worse.
When you look at the home service industry, is that ever an industry that you'd look to venture into, or?
Home service industry is not an industry I'm familiar with.
Okay. When you're kind of looking into, I guess you mentioned you invest a lot in the U.S., but you've also gone global. When you're going global, since you might not be as aware of their socioeconomic status, their political status, how do you go into that not being as aware as you would be investing into a U.S. company?
I would say having a broad overall knowledge of geopolitics and just a general knowledge of cultures and of things going on in the world is a big help. I'm fortunate that I do have that broad knowledge, but I am always going to ask, around and do research as well. I would give an example, like for example, on the rare occasions I have invested in companies in Africa. It has been when there is both a founder that is originally from on the ground there, that was born and raised there, and also one that is from the West, or at the very least they were born and raised there, but were educated in the West. So having the best of both of those worlds, that there are ways you can work around that, and also if you have networks that you can vet some things through. I did have somebody that warned me about a founder in a foreign country, saved me a lot of time. I was vetting this company, and I knew who to ask. That they'd been in a role and knew enough. My posterior was saved big time there. So having the networks also to do that vetting are important. And I would say, obviously, there are various tax considerations in some jurisdictions as well. So be aware of those. And if you're going to be paying something to that local government on exit, I would say that having knowledge, something I said earlier, have all the knowledge. You will never regret having knowledge. And you will never regret having networks. And you will never regret having experience. Is there any further you'd like me to go on that, or did that answer your question?
I guess the only other thing with that would be when you're maintaining good communication with the companies over there, how do you make sure that things are still going the way they're supposed to be going when you can't as easily access, be able to be hands-on with the company where it's at, since it's so far away?
Well, fortunately, we have a thing called video conferencing today, and also you follow the updates they're sending. You ask questions. You can email questions. You can pick up the phone and give them a call as well. So, and also sometimes talking to other investors. If you know other investors that are involved in that company, having conversations with them. Being in an advisory role sometimes is helpful also. I find that sometimes helpful to take on an advisory role with a company I'm an investor in, because it means I'm getting that much more information that much sooner. So that's a way as well.
Hi, David. Welcome. Always glad to have you here on campus speaking, former Sailfish Tank speaker as well. My question to you, and you alluded to this a moment ago, was what is the importance to you as an investor in having a board role or some sort of advisory role to the companies that you're investing in the venture space, and to what extent do you think that moves the needle? And at the same time, you can't be everywhere all the time, so does that limit the number of investments that you feel you could focus on if you are involved?
I would say that I've done the board role thing, of course, but I am also sometimes leery of the board role due to liability issues. You don't want to end up in a lawsuit when you weren't the one involved, but you do have a fiduciary duty as a board member. So I have done it on occasion, but I am also sometimes more inclined to take the advisory role, and from the informational standpoint, they can help. I get more information sooner, and then I'm also able to, kind of give some guidance earlier as well, I think. And then, of course, because you're in an advisory role, you're also getting, often some nice option packages as a result of that too. So nobody's going to complain about that. Now, I would say, as far as it depends. Some advisory roles take more time than others. And not every company in my portfolio am I in an advisory role, and not every advisory role that I am in is necessarily in one of my portfolio companies. So it does vary, and I think also looking at, obviously it's good to have that advisory role and get some extra juice out of being in that role. However, it also needs to be considered for the fairness of the company. What am I bringing to this company that I should be in that advisory role? Because you're also in service to that company in that advisory role.
Going into networking and building a network, how important it is to you to build a network and make connections in order to get to where you want to go or get to the company that you want to invest in?
I would say at this point, a lot of times those companies come to me more than me having to come to them. Now, there would have been a time where I more had to go to them, but at a certain point, that reverses. I mean, think of it like momentum. You have a stone that's rolling down a hill. You know, maybe at first you kind of got to push it, but that starts getting momentum. It knocks down some other stuff, and things just start moving. So at some point, it reverses the course where you're not having to go out as much and they're coming to you. And that's a great place to be in, of course. Now, do I still network? Absolutely, because I want to meet people. I want to see and have interesting conversations, learn new things, and possibly maybe can introduce them to somebody. I would say from a networking perspective, look first to what you can give, not what you're going to get in that conversation. Because if you know what you have to offer, and you have introductions, things are much more likely to happen. Don't just be looking, what can I get out of this conversation, going into every conversation. What value can you add? Lead with that first, and that ends up paying rich rewards in the longer run from a networking perspective. As well, I would say, always do your best to leave a good impression. Do the right thing. Even if it's in a difficult situation, do the right thing, because nothing burns a network faster than somebody who does the wrong thing and that gets around. It's the right thing to do anyway, but if you need a reason and a rationale, just know that word does get around. So do the right thing. Those are the things that come up in answer to your question on networking.
Hi, thank you for being here. John Kemp Jr.
I remember we met at Governor DeSantis' presentation.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let's say you have a first-time founder who's very committed and motivated, and they have an idea where there's a need and there's a gap, and it's a pretty good idea. And let's say, for example, it's in the healthcare industry. What are you looking for in that first-time founder to actually invest in them?
Well, I would say they're going to need to show why they can be the one to pull this off, because a lot of a company running is execution. It's can they execute on this? It could be the best idea in the world, but are they able to pull it off? It's that chicken or egg, which is proverbial with first-time founders. How do we know this guy can pull it off when the rubber meets the road? How? And obviously, what is if you as a first-time founder, and what is your why in it? Because if there's a strong why, that also means they're more likely to continue that in the long run. And what's their skill and education and background that maybe makes up for the fact that they haven't actually run that company before? Because if they can show that they have that skill from somewhere else, or they can show they have reasons why they would be good at that, that makes it more enticing. And I will be frank that a lot of times investors, there is a bias to go with somebody who has already shown they've run a company, because investors are out to make that money, and they want to know that there's a decent chance of success. Because anytime you're investing in an early stage company, it is inherently risky. So, I mean, I would say you want to do anything you can as an investor to be mitigating that risk. And I would add another thing on risk and reward. It's a tangent. I'll come back to your question. But I would add tangentially, from the risk reward perspective, when I look at early stage companies, anytime somebody's founding a startup, that's inherently high risk. So I might as well look at something that's really solving a major problem, or that's potentially a moonshot, if I'm going to take that risk in the first place. But that said, I'm going to do whatever I can to mitigate those risks as an investor. So back to your question, as somebody is a first-time founder, what can be done to mitigate that? At least get some experience in your field. I mean, that could be helpful. And your why. And also have, maybe if you can get good people around you that are on your team, that can be helpful as well. Also, the willingness to listen and learn from older voices in the room. Now, obviously, sometimes those voices are going to be wrong, so you need to have discernment as well, which is not easy when you're a first-time founder. But having those factors in place, and sometimes the rest of the team can sometimes make up for what one person may not bring. That answer your question?
Going back to Trent's question on networking, what advice would you give on building meaningful professional relationships for students early on?
Well, I would say if you can get yourselves into rooms outside the classroom, that is going to be helpful. Now, whether and I may not be the right one to ask. I dropped out of college pretty quick. I was arguing with too many professors and winning arguments, and felt I was wasting time. But what I would say from just general knowledge is if you can get yourself in rooms outside the classroom with business people, that's going to be helpful as well. And maybe interning and show that you have good questions, show that you are thinking of things. If you can come up with something, and this is a wild card here, but let's say there's a business owner and you can come up with something that's helpful to them and say, hey, I've got this idea, and start helping them implement that. If you could you raise your profile in their eyes. This person is proactive. This person is solution-oriented. This person's going to maybe make my life easier. Any further you want elaborated on that?
I want to throw an ad in for a mentor-protege program. So just for all you students who aren't aware, in your junior and senior year, you can opt into our mentor-protege program, and we can line you up with a great business mentor, such as David.
I did turn that down last year. I was asked if I would be on it. I didn't have the time. It's the time factor.
Sorry. But I'm saying we'd have a huge number of business people who are happy to mentor you. But that would be an example of something to actively engage in outside the classroom. You don't get academic credit, but you get a valuable experience, that one-on-one tutoring. So do pay attention to your emails on that Mentor Protege program when it relaunches in the fall. It's a one academic year commitment.
Yeah, David, thank you for coming out. I just wanted to hear about some of your most notable or noteworthy investments that you've made, whether they're vastly successful, unexpected failures, or just educational, and what specifically distinguished those investments from the rest.
Well, I alluded to one earlier that gave a story that was kind of funny. I'll go to, I can give you a few examples of some successes and a failure, what to look for, what not to look for. So this is going to be kind of stream of consciousness here, so no real order. But I would say one company I got into in 2020 is a company called Ether Diamonds. They're making diamonds out of carbon removed from the atmosphere. And at the time, they expressed their longer-term goal was to make graphene and other carbon-based materials by the same process. This company, I was one of their earliest investors and advisors, and within a couple years, they'd done so many, I don't even remember how many X multiple, but they'd done great, and they're still around and doing well to this day. But I would say what hit me about that company, it was the team. And I had a gut read that, okay, these people, they know what they're doing, they work well together, and they're smart enough to know that they're better off going in the diamonds because of the sex appeal of diamonds. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, everybody loves diamonds, whatnot. So they knew that that was the best point of entry to get to where they long-term wanted to go. And sure enough, they did end up selling off the diamond division. They're not even operating under the name Ether Diamonds anymore because they sold that off, and they sold it off once the industry had changed enough that the margins were lower for synthetic diamonds. Now, note, they didn't have to call them synthetic diamonds because of the FTC doesn't require that, but the market, they sold that division off then at the right time and are now doing business under the name Loa Carbon and are focused on their original plan. So seeing that strategic vision and that they knew what they're doing, but they also worked well together, and just sometimes you can sense about the people that when they are locked on, and that's an example of one that's done very well. I would say, to give you an example on the flip side, one of the few that's really problematic, and I'm not going to name names here because I'm going to keep some confidentiality, but I will at least let you know the general story and the lessons learned from that. I would say there was a company I invested in quite some time back that on the surface, everything looks solid. Obviously, you're not going to write a check if it doesn't. It was in a non-U.S. jurisdiction, and it had some very good people all on the cap table. Looks good, but after a certain point, they had the founder showed himself to be very unethical. You fast forward, he's doing shady stuff, and this company at one point. Let's see, I'm trying to keep this anonymous because I need to keep some details out of here, so pardon me. Let's see. Yeah, it was a certain point where the investors were vesting over a period of time, and there were some lockup periods. And you fast forward, and I am offered through the founder millions more than this thing is worth. And I'm like, okay, I know you are dirty. I know that you are not everything so far. If I just done the opposite of what you say, you'll turn out right. So my rule around this guy is like, okay, if he's telling me something, it's almost like it was such a caricature that you would, if you do the opposite of what they're recommending, you're probably going to be okay, and I've lost complete trust in this guy. And so he's offering me, well, why am I being offered through him millions more than this stake is worth? And I'm thinking, okay, there's got to be something here that they want it, and I better not sell. And they were telling me, like, if you got to make your decision within the next few hours. Obviously, that's another usual red flag. If someone is telling you to like, you got to make your decision in a few hours or not at all, usually there's something going on. So I'm thinking, all right, well, I'm not going to sell because he knows something I don't. And there had not been, the forthcoming information that was alluded to in somebody else's question earlier. So I did not sell. I regretted not selling that because it turns out what was going on was a certain faction was trying to get control of the company so they could manipulate the market. And later on, the founder is asking me if I would be willing to want to come in and be making money off manipulating a market. And he could not understand why I was not willing to do that. He thought I was an idiot for not wanting to come in and join in this, and I'm thinking, something's wrong with you that you can't even understand why I'm saying no to this. So I would say, lessons learned there would be, obviously there were a few things jurisdictionally. They actually, non-U.S., you sometimes do need to be careful non-U.S., as has been alluded to already, but they switched jurisdictions a few times during the course of this whole thing. And so, covering tracks. And I would say then as well, I probably just should have taken it and not, in retrospect, I should have definitely taken it. I was offered, millions more than the stake was worth at that time. And, but I was not seeing that clearly. My judgment was clouded by, past experience with that individual. But if I had taken it, I could have walked. And even if it had gone way up, I would have still made money. Now to this day, it's at this point, it's worth pennies on the dollar. So those are sometimes, just walk if you can. You're getting a chance, walk. But as I say, everything else this gentleman had done led me to believe that, okay, I do the opposite. Some way I'm getting screwed by this guy if I'm selling to him. So anyway, that's the other example. I think maybe one more example of a positive, because just because you're in a foreign jurisdiction doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I'm an investor in a Norwegian company called Choose with 3 O's that is doing a platform for sustainable aviation fuel, a tech platform for all of that. And they just recently announced partnership with Air France, KLM. So again, there's pros and cons to foreign things. I don't want to come down too hard on that, but there's a couple examples of some pros and cons.
I really appreciate you being so open to student questions today and wanting to give back to them and share your knowledge about entrepreneurship and investing in venture capital. Can we give David a wonderful round of applause? I have a 1 o'clock, there's a 1 o'clock time, class start time that I want to be respectful of for those if they need to go. But I want to encourage you, I'm sure, David, you'd be happy to hang around.
I'll hang around for a while.
Questions, happy to answer some more questions. If you feel like your question didn't get satisfactorily addressed, come up and talk to David. As a programming note, if you were encouraged to attend or want to register your attendance, our iPad is currently down, but there's a notebook at the back. Do put your name down in a legible manner and your ID number, and we'll get you registered and get that out to faculty to know that you came today. And as always, I appreciate students coming out to these events and members of the community who have come out to show your support as well. Thank you for coming today.